Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee of the 14th of December. Just a quick welcome to members and to officers taking part in the meeting, our public participants today, and anybody watching live at home or afterwards, you're very welcome. The first agenda item that we've got, as everybody is here, there are no apologies to give, is declarations of interest. So I'll just give an opportunity for anybody to declare any interests. I can't see any, or some shakes of some heads, so thank you very much. So no interest to declare under that item, and that then takes us straight through to item 2, which is exclusion of the press and the public, and this is a consideration because Annex A of agenda item 7, which is a pension or exit discretion, on the ground that it contains information relating to individuals and the financial affairs of particular persons. What I'm going to suggest is that we tweak around the order of the agenda slightly so that agenda item 7 is the last item that we deal with, to make sure we remain in public for as long as possible before we drop out. Could I just see those in favour of going into private at that stage? Thank you very much. That's a clear majority in favour of accepting that. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting that are on pages 1 to 4, just to give anybody an opportunity to raise any issues with the minutes. If not, if I could see those in favour of accepting the minutes. Thank you very much. So again, clear majority in favour of accepting the minutes. And that then takes us on to agenda item 4, which is public participation. And we have 2 registered public participants who are very welcome to today's meeting, both registered to speak with regards to the proposed structure of the corporate leadership group. Our first speaker is Janet O'Neill. Janet, you have 3 minutes to talk to us, as I'm sure you know. Welcome, and over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah. Okay, my name's Janet O'Neill. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and past President of the Royal Town Planning Institute, which has 25,000 members. I'm part of a York-based planning team who are regular users of the Council's planning service. Indeed, we are the most regular participants in the planning service for medium and large-scale developments. We represent clients who are significant in the economy of the city, particularly in the residential, commercial and higher education sectors of the economy. That we, by definition our clients as well, need is an efficient and effective planning service. The economy of the city is expected to be under severe strain over the next few years. Council support for positive economic initiatives will be vital for the benefit of residents, businesses, the service industry and many others. An effective planning system is fundamental to delivering the Council's economic ambitions. We represent one of the partners in York Central Partnership. We and others will be bringing forward major applications over coming years that will bring significant planning fees into the planning service. Adoption of the local plan will unleash a flood of major planning application and fee income to the Council. We have great respect for our planning colleagues in the Council and understand the difficulties they are operating under. These teams need a senior town planner to lead them, to give them guidance and support, to share their own experience with those with less experience. Advising on major planning appeals, judicial reviews and dealing with government comes with such experience. Ours and other agents are likely to be greatly disturbed by the prospect of this potentially no longer being the case. Just as concerning is the proposal for the local plan team to be responsible to a non-planner. The course of achieving an adopted local plan for the city has been lengthy and beset with difficulties. The current emerging local plan is further advanced than at any time in 20 years, but this has been on hold for a year and no programme is fixed to reopen the examination. The city has a very small local plan team. Sessions at the examination in public last year had representatives for dozens of interests wishing to contribute to the debate. Most had professional agents. Adoption of a sound local plan has many hurdles yet. Issues of greenbelt strategy and housing provision, not to mention economic strategy, are yet to be reconsulted on and debated in order to assist the inspectors in reaching their conclusions. We don't anticipate a local plan being adopted within the next 2 years. If the council sees the benefits of having an adopted local plan, the last thing to assist with this is to remove a senior planner from the head of the team. This small team will have many inquiry sessions to prepare evidence for and present to the inspectors. They need leadership and support that outside disciplines are not able to provide.
Thank you very much for your comments and for speaking today, and we'll take your comments into account when we get to the relevant agenda item later. Our second registered public speaker today is Gwen Swinburne, who's registered to speak on the same agenda item. And Gwen, over to you for your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, okay. This is a tough one, I'm sorry. Thank you, Chair. I recognise this style of report presentation is now standard with no proper options analysis. I recognise that I'm also wasting my time, but here goes. In common with what we expect under the Floyd leadership, there is no rationale or purpose articulated for this incoherent and incomplete report. Any professional officer report should have provided full costs for a 4-year period, with all those shiny new annual increments added as an example. How can the costs be stated when the job grading has not been undertaken? Or will there be unavoidable costs added for the special few behind the scenes? So we have no strategy, rationale, options analysis, nor proper costs. Nor do we have a review timeline after April, despite hints at further restructure. I see that despite the buried PwC report that stated that Floyd's directorate already had far too many high-paid staff, he has extended his already significant control and cherry-picked from other departments' responsibilities. This level of control is now dangerous. You'll note that the 2 main delivery functions, people and place, have been marginalised with only 2 of the 9 positions on the corporate management team, the rest virtually all administrators from Floyd's department. To consider adding further responsibilities to the managing officer at this time defies all logic. The current portfolio is not performing at all well, so adding new strategic responsibilities is, at best, unwise. To move the failing council house section to the already challenged regeneration department risks materially harming the service to the tenants. It defies logic, as does the placing of the very lucky climate change assistant director under the direction of the council's lawyer. Chair, the deletion of the AD planning function should have been clearly rationalised also. The planning and local planning function is failing, so it seems illogical that so many huge projects and local plan in play that management be reduced. I see no rationale for that post to be deleted, even if the incumbent were to be an issue. Finally, we have an interim head of HR in post for several years now. We are paying over £25,000 a year additional management fees to North Yorkshire County Council for her, plus her long distance travel. When will this leakage of our taxes stop, finally? Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Your comments will be noted and will be taken into account when we get to the agenda item later today. Thank you very much. That then takes us back to the agenda, and thank you to the 2 public speakers. The next agenda item is agenda item 5, which is changes to membership of committees and outside bodies, which is included on pages 5 to 8. And I'll hand over to Janie.
Thank you, Chair. This is a standard report that I bring to this committee to advise members of the changes that have been notified to the various committees. The current changes that we have for consideration appear at paragraph 2 of the report on page 5. There is another one that has been referred to me, but I'm afraid I just missed the details in the report. And the additional change is that Councillor Widdowson is to replace Councillor Eyre as the chair of the shareholder committee. The reason for this being that Councillor Eyre has a conflict of interest by virtue of being a director of Verito, and so therefore is unable to chair this committee. So that is my additional request to change for this committee to consider. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Open that item for any questions or comments. If not, we have the recommendations in front of us between pages 5 and 8 with that additional appointment change that Janie has just told us about. Could I see all those in favour of accepting those recommendations? Thank you very much. That's a clear majority in favour of that. So that then takes us on to agenda item 6, which is the proposed structure of the corporate leadership group. And this is on pages 9 to 124 in the pack. And I'll hand over to Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hopefully the report is relatively self-explanatory, so I won't go through it in all its detail. Clearly, as you'll see, recommended option in the report is the option 3, and I will pick out some of the specific issues set out within that proposal shortly. I think just to set out in terms of actually reaching this point, we have consulted widely, so all chief officers have been provided with a range of opportunities, and that's included one-to-one discussions with myself. All heads of service were also sent proposals and were asked to comment, and all group leaders were given a briefing and the opportunity to feed back any further comments. So many respondents supported the proposals in option 3, and that's whether specifically just in terms of area or for the council as a whole. And the details in terms of consultation are set out further in paragraph 59. I think just before I go on to some of the key outcomes from the recommended option, I think it's worth just stressing 2 overarching issues. And first is that this is about the council as a whole and how it responds to the pandemic, how it manages its financial risks across the organisation, how it supports the city and businesses, and delivers on other key priorities such as climate change, economy of the city, local plan, and other major projects, and ensuring that as a whole council, we can support those as very much being at the forefront, because most of those challenges are not simply addressed by one individual head of service or one individual assistant director. To meet those challenges, you have to look across the whole of the council, how different parts work together. And that leads to my second sort of overarching issue, which is culture. And in many respects, the culture of the organisation is more important than the structure itself. So again, that we ensure there's a whole organisation approach, that people support each other. And the success of this council is very much relies on our services working together, working with partners. And it is that culture of working together we very much want to promote going forward. So just in terms of the actual recommendations and specifically in terms of the recommended option to take forward, just to draw out the key issues from that. So first of all, it creates a directorate of people, which cover children's and adult services, including education. And within that area, there are 2 new director roles created, which would report to the corporate director. And that, we feel, gives stronger resilience, in particular, to an area where in the past we have seen significant turnover. And having those 3 director roles, we believe, gives that greater strength of resilience going forward. The new director roles will very much focus on issues covering education, prevention, integration, commissioning, and in particular, a commitment to achieve much greater integration with the health sector, enabling the council to respond effectively to forthcoming challenges and changes in the NHS structure. Second aspect is the creation of Director of Customers and Communities, and that's very much with a view to integrate and work across our customer and community teams, with an emphasis on supporting our customers, working closely with communities, the new cultural strategy, working with wards, and a strengthening of equalities across the council. This directorate will also particularly have a key role in supporting communities post-pandemic and working with partners such as the voluntary sector. A third key outcome is the creation of an assistant director for policy and strategy, and that will provide a chief officer lead for climate change, which we know is clearly a key council priority, and will also coordinate policy performance communications across the council and support work on devolution. We also then consolidating some chief officer roles in the place area, so that will create 2 new director roles, again reporting to corporate director, and that will cover economy and housing, and also planning, environment and transport. I think just worth picking up on the issues in terms of planning and the local plan. Stress that this does remain a key priority. The new director clearly will have a role to play, and very much with a commitment, as the first speaker talked about, to ensure our plan service does remain effective. And the next stage, where we look at head of service structures and the resources supporting that, we will very much look at the planning team and ensure they have got sufficient resource to deliver upon the local plan. We have also set out a proposal for an element of transition in the place directorate, where one of the assistant directors will be retained on a transitional period. And clearly we will keep things under review. We keep things under review on an ongoing basis. Proposals do also recognise the need for element of stability to deal with issues post-pandemic, and to deliver some further small savings on top of savings that have already been achieved during this year in the chief officer structure. Clearly the pandemic affects many things and will affect the way the council operates in the future, and we've tried to reflect that in terms of the support given to how we might provide support to vulnerable adults, vulnerable children, and also how we need to resource adults and children to really manage their financial challenges that they face. I think it's important to stress the proposals are about improving the organisation as a whole, which I mentioned earlier. And I think just to give a couple of examples on that, in case of adults and children, it's clearly important that we have the strength of the senior management structure there to ensure we deliver effective services, have strong safeguarding, that we are able to work with our key partners on integration. But crucially, it's also important that there's sufficient capacity in that area to manage the major financial pressures. If we don't do that, those financial pressures end up affecting the rest of the council. And in many respects, having a strong, financially stable directorate of people is really important for the rest of the council in terms of being able to invest money. And that investment is either in our revenue budget, but also in terms of being able to invest on our capital projects to then support the economy and to very much build back better in terms of York coming out post-pandemic. As I say, structure is only one part of this. How the organisation works together is equally important, and there's a diagram set out on page 24, just above para 52, which just shows you an example in terms of how customers and communities and public health would need to work closely and very much be working at the heart of the work that goes on in people and place directorates. So it is the intention that everybody will try and work collectively, collegiately together. So just to conclude, it's structure which I believe strengthens people-based services, particularly around integration and safeguarding, provides opportunity to build on the excellent work done in communities and customers and respond effectively to a pandemic, gives leadership to climate change, provides platform also to ensure we are able to tackle some of our biggest financial challenges, which then enable us to continue to invest in issues such as economic growth, housing or transport. I'll stop at that point, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. Trudy, just to check whether you had any comments at this stage or just wanted to answer questions.
I haven't at this stage. I'll just answer questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Something that I should have mentioned under the public participation slot, but I'll do it now, is that we also received two written submissions alongside the registered public speakers, and thank you to those, which were from York Property Forum and Richard France, that I know have been shared and distributed to members of the committee about this item. So just to acknowledge that. So I'll open it for any questions and comments. I think comment from me, sort of emphasising really the points that Ian just made, is that I was pleased to see both the Director of Safeguarding and also the Director of Prevention and Commissioning in that new People Directorate, recognising that children's social care, adult social care and education, with the work going on at the moment, are crucial and obviously huge parts of the financial expenditure of not just this council but others. So to make sure that work and really those safeguards are in place, I think is going to be incredibly important over the next year. My only question, which I was going to ask Ian and Trudy to talk about a little bit more, was given the representations at the start and from those that I just mentioned, one of the bullet points on paragraph 4, which Ian, I think you started to explain with the two new director roles, talk about a strengthened head of service structure, particularly there with reference to planning. And I wondered whether you could tell us a little bit more about that, about time scale, and a little bit more about that 6-month period where the, in a sense, structures will continue to be reviewed.
Yeah, I can start on that. I think it is important to recognise, the next level down is equally as important, clearly. And in many ways, the next level down does need some review, because in certain areas, it's probably not as strong in terms of the level of resource that we need to really deliver upon priorities. Now, clearly, everybody's aware of the financial challenges, but I think that at that next tier down, it's not an area where we are necessarily looking for large scale savings, because we recognise that actually you do need the resource to deliver on some of those priorities. So planning would be one area where we would obviously look, but that would equally be done across the whole of the council. In terms of the structure that you need to effectively support those director roles is absolutely important, and we've already asked the existing corporate directors to have a look at their structure. We'll be discussing that further in the coming weeks, so I envisage that will take place, happen, and then move to sort of progress consultation early in 2021, and certainly with a view to have that structure in place by sort of early mid 2021. And I think on the local plan has been mentioned, that remains an absolute priority. We will commit whatever resource really it takes to actually get that and to deliver upon that. And so I would hope that the head of service structure can progress fairly quickly, and very much be aligned with the implementation of the chief officer structure, albeit it will probably follow slightly behind it, clearly. And that's obviously natural that it should do that.
Thank you very much for that. And my only other question before I'll hand it over was about if we were to agree the recommended option here, there's reference to a formal consultation that I imagine involves staff and trade unions. So just to hear a little bit more about that, please.
Want me to do that bit, Ian?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
So obviously, whilst we've done, and Ian's already identified a lot of the consultation that's already gone, already happened prior to putting these options forward in a recommendation. It will, depending on the decision tonight of staffing matters and urgency, we will then need to formally consult with all the staff involved, and following the normal HR processes with that. So staff will be, and it's all detailed in the timeline in the report, but that gives us a formal 30-day consultation period that will start tomorrow, depending on the decision of staffing matters and urgency. And within that timeline, it's to come back to staffing matters and urgency in the early February meeting.
Great, thank you very much for that. Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, you've asked one of my questions, so that's great. I've got one question, and then I may come back for some comments, if that's all right, Chair. And I don't mean to be uncomfortable with this one. I'm sorry, I've not spoken to any officers about it prior to now, but I just want to flag up the issue around the authoring of the report, which I understand it's been raised with me, so I've agreed to raise it tonight at the meeting, just for explanation really around the digital authoring of the report. I'm fully aware that there's consultation with elected members and executive members as well, but the way that the digital authoring of the document in the report would suggest that a first draft may well have been started or initiated by an executive member rather than a council officer. I just wondered how that might have happened.
Ian?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just to quash any rumours that are going around, this report is mine and Trudy's work, and if anyone wants to see all of the exchange of emails between myself and Trudy and the many versions I asked her to produce, I'm happy for somebody to see those with due confidentiality. So I can categorically say that that is my report. It wouldn't be here if I didn't own it and I hadn't significantly written it with Trudy's input. There is a technicality issue in terms of why there's a digital signature elsewhere, which I'll maybe ask Trudy to comment upon. But I can categorically say that that is my report written by myself. It's natural that executive members and other non-executive members and other officers will naturally have given me comments, which at times I may have amended those report due to those comments. But just to end any rumour, and that is my report, and I'm happy to say that to anybody. And Trudy might want to just explain the technicalities as to why it appears on the document.
Yeah, so I think update on that. I think I'll have previously used a previous template as well, as I do with many of the reports as well. So that's what we think is where the digital kind of authoring has come from. And again, what Ian said, we've had a lot through the consultation of people sending in comments on reports, so track changes and comment on kind of the boxes technically, because we're obviously not in the office and everything's done remotely. So that's the only thing we can put it down to. But again, reiterate what Ian said. Ian has done the work with myself supporting and the numerous versions backwards and forwards.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back, Councillor Myers? Councillor Duggan.
Yes, just in terms of questions, I wanted to just follow through on that, the representations that we've had concerning the planning function, and I appreciate on page 22 there is, as you said, there's a reference there to Director of Environment, Transport and Planning, bringing together two existing AD roles and planning placed under this director to promote its independence from the economy, which is the other directorship, Economy, Regeneration and Housing. So I suppose the question which was posed by Janet O'Neill was just in terms of at the appropriate level, which you seem to be suggesting would be the head of service which is below, obviously below the director, whether there would be a qualified town planner who would head up that particular element would be where that expertise would sit rather than with the director. I mean, I appreciate that, you know, directors can't be qualified in necessarily in all the areas that they manage, but I think it's important to reassure people that there is going to be somebody with that level of expertise, in the same way as I would hope that the environment and the transport would equally have suitably qualified and experienced staff to head them up once we get to that level of reorganisation. So I don't know if you can comment on that, Trudy or Ian.
Yeah, I can comment initially, and Trudy might want to add further, but in essence, the expertise, if you're an expert in a particular field, and many people who obviously get higher up start, well, if not all those people have started as an expert in some form or another, due to their sort of professional background, and clearly our structure, similar to many other councils, very much the expert in that field is the head of service. And so the head of IT, for example, is a head of service. We don't have an expert, and I hesitate without offending anybody, but I don't think we necessarily have an expert at the corporate management team in terms of IT, for example, nor probably, and whilst Trudy's here, do we have probably an expert in HR at that level, really. In that, the expertise on most functions comes at the head of service level. Now, clearly, there are some heads of service who have more wider general roles, but generally it's at that level. And, other functions I could name, in terms of transport, you have a head of transport. At that next higher up chief officer level, they tend to be, and to get into that sort of higher grade, they tend to need to cover a range of functions, and typically, 3, 4, 5 significant areas of function. They will typically have an expertise in one of those themselves, because they've probably come from a background. And so if you look at the director of sort of environment, transport, planning, the likelihood is that anybody who gets those roles in the future is going to have an expertise in either planning, transport, or environment. But actually their role isn't to be the expert. Their role is to manage the services, to manage them effectively. And I think, as the first speaker was saying, what is important is that you get an effective planning function. That isn't necessarily that you need the expert at a director level. And actually the role of directors is a much wider issue than being an expert. And you can argue that if you try and still be the expert when you're the director, you're maybe not actually doing the director role in some respects, because you have to provide more wider sort of strategic management. And so, yes, the next phase of the structural review is to look at that head of service level. What expertise do we need at that level? And very much to recognise the role that those people play in actually delivering all of our key functions and key priorities. So I certainly see that there is a significant role or roles at that head of service level for people who are experts in planning.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that? I just think
Please,
in terms of experts as well, we have a lot of experts in key areas that may also not be a head of service level. So I think it's to remember that actually there's some experts in some quite unique areas as well as some bigger areas that may also not have that head of service responsibility because of that technical expertise required throughout the organisation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Ian and Trudy for the report, of course, and also for the conversations we've had about it. I'm certainly not instinctively against, and I've explained that I think a new structure with flatter structures is something that certainly looks good on paper, provided everything gets ironed out and public service deliveries the key priority, and that works for the organisation. So, you know, we want this restructure to succeed, and this structure can deliver that. But as I've mentioned before, certainly when speaking to yourself, Ian, around the risks that it does carry, particularly the concerns we've got around the people directorate, merging, you know, everything's a core. There are lots of core functions across council, but adult social care and children's have both been really difficult directorates in recent years due to national budget pressures as well, mainly, and you know, there's been overspends, regular overspends, and certain areas of public service delivery within them directorates that need improvement. And so to get a merge of those two obviously creates some risk and some concern about those two key issues: managing the finances and delivering improved services. And you know, I'm well aware that you've kept the resourcing at assistant director level, and obviously I hope that in the first instance that works. I will quickly answer. I think there is something in the correspondence that we've got from committee members got today from Richard France and from the Property Forum, as well as the points that Janet O'Neill made. I think looking again at the structure and taking on board what you just said, I think there is a concern around planning and the need for planning in a city like York, with its conservation and its upcoming major topics, essentially its major developments like York Central. National planning legislation is currently being discussed at government level. Devolution coming down the line early next year, and I'm not sure if I believe that I think we need the extra resource in planning, looking again at this proposed structure, because if you look at the local plan, there have been regular concerns about the resourcing of the council's planning department to be able to deal with the additional work around what the inspectorate want from the council, and you know, that's obviously a concern within the existing structure. If we were to lose resource from planning and potentially lose the experience that and the qualifications, I understand the points again made around people in the organisation can work up to position, and I am concerned about the significance of the planning role itself within the structure, for it to be meaningful to outside bodies and partners. So that's something I think there might be something in the correspondence we've got in recent days about that. Not least, I mean, the final point I'd make on that is that every time I'm on a committee talking about climate change or talking about the local plan and housing, the supplementary planning documents and the need for us to act quickly after local plan might be adopted. And it just seems like that is not something that elected members can even look towards, because we've just not got the capacity to be able to do that once we can. So supplementary planning documents related to climate change, for example, are just not developed and not worked on because of capacity issues at present. And given where we are with the local plan, that's understandable, but don't want that to be a common feature, if you like. So forgive me for the long ramble. Those are just my comments, really. And I guess I'll finish it with a question, as you would, just to say, what breadth of expertise have we got in planning, given these letters that we've received today as committee members and the public speaker as well raising that concern? I'd really want to understand that a little bit more.
Thank you very much. I know you've touched on both those areas, Ian, but I'll go back to you.
I mean, I think first thing, I think you need to take individuals out of this. So I'm going to make a comment which is about the structure going forward has a corporate director who has planning as part of their responsibilities. It will also have a director who has planning as a significant part of their responsibilities. Both of those two people, who are clearly senior posts, would be expected to ensure that the functions that they have, which are not just planning, but in terms of things such as environment, the economy, transport, highways, they will very much have to ensure that the structure beneath them is sufficient to be able to deliver on the range of priorities. Now, clearly, the local plan and the planning team is one of those aspects. So structure going forward actually creates further, actually higher roles which are covering planning. It's that director's role to then, working with the corporate director and myself to ensure we've got the right resources to deliver on our key priorities. And clearly that going forward will remain, and I am absolutely able to commit that we will ensure that planning and local plan will be resourced effectively to actually get us to a point in the future which, let's be honest, we haven't achieved in the past. So going forward is what it's all about in terms of that structure, and making sure we adequately resource, and that will be a role for the director who covers planning, environment and transport, to make sure that those key functions are adequately resourced and that we deliver on what is a stated council priority. And that's my job as well, is to deliver what are the stated elected member priorities, to make sure those are happening. And my job is to move resource, flex resource as and when we need to do that.
Thank you very much. And I don't know, Ian, picking up the first comment Councillor Myers made it in the people side of the pillar a little bit. There are a lot of changes, but actually the new director of safeguarding and the new director, obviously, of prevention and commissioning are new roles. And of course, there remains an assistant director for adult social care, an assistant director for children's social care, and an assistant director for education, in addition to the heads of service in those areas, reflecting the crucial nature of some of those areas. But have you had anything to add?
Just a little bit. I mean, I guess, yeah, it is really important we get those areas right. And I think, just picking up on Councillor Myers' comments, I think there's a lot of really good services within those areas. So I think, first of all, there's been some excellent work, and particularly during the pandemic, and I would pay tribute to the work of people, who've supported the schools, who have supported, work with the hospital and CCGs, and all of the work that's been going on in terms of safeguarding, and work with vulnerable children. So there's some excellent services delivered, and some significant improvements have been achieved over the last year or two in those areas. I think it's really important, though, and you rightly highlight the national financial challenges, those ones that everyone's got, but also, we've got further financial challenges post-pandemic. And I touched upon it early on when I introduced it. If we don't get that area right, actually it is all of those areas, elsewhere in the council which potentially could suffer. If we are faced with, many millions of pounds overspend in those areas, you are then having to look across the whole of the council at further reductions, and that could affect, environmental services, the work on transport, even, the level of resource we can shift into a local plan, for example. So it's really important that we have a structure that organisationally works well. And it's my aspiration, certainly, and I know, I'm sure it's shared by many members, that we build on the excellent work in the people services. We sort out and try and manage the financial position there, and we aspire to deliver the very best service we can for, vulnerable adults and vulnerable children. One final thing is just the opportunities for integration with the health service are very significant, and changes that are coming in terms of the changes in terms of how CCGs will operate, their geography, and the role of the local authority in terms of health system mean that we absolutely need to give quite a bit of priority to that work to make sure that we get the best solution in terms of integration for our residents. And whilst all the senior roles in that directorate will have a role to play, one of the new roles, clearly in terms of the prevention commissioning, will be asked very much to lead on work around integration.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hook.
Hi, just two things. I mean, I like the way that the planning and the transport and environment are sort of mixed together, because I haven't yet seen a single plan that I've commented on that hasn't been transport implications or unsustainable transport or something like that. So the collegiate response and all working together and getting people who are experts in all fields is really reassuring, because it can only make for a better service. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that on people, it's great that you've got the children and the adults merging in, so no one actually falls through that gap as they get to that 18, 19, 21 age, and they're still held and helped all the way through. So I think that's really good too. And there's so many parallels. We've been looking at some of the budgeting on that, and there are some very similar things with the adults and the children that mean you can learn, one can learn from the other. So that's good to be together. So I just wanted to endorse that, really.
Thank you very much for those comments. Councillor Duggan.
Yes, I want to support the comments that Floyd has made in terms of the learning that we've gone through, experienced during this pandemic. I would certainly very much welcome the work in very difficult circumstances to support our communities in the difficult times, but it has also given unprecedented opportunity to look at different methods of working and to review our practices, which I would hope would help to contribute to the different thinking, not least, as has been referred to, closer working with the CCG and health. Public health has obviously been very much to the forefront of the whole response, but equally responding to individual customers' needs and helping to achieve a better level of service on even tighter resources is something that very much welcome as a possible outcome. And I also note on paragraph 45 referred to intending to have a structure that can operate in a manner that avoids situations where individual directorates operate in isolation. I mean, the situation that we're working with now obviously has created extra difficulties that we might not otherwise have, where we're having to have virtual meetings rather than physical meetings. But nevertheless, if we can have a structure where different departments are working together as much as possible and reflecting on the broader objectives of the council to maximise efficiencies, that's certainly very much to be welcomed. And as the paper says, the option would deliver savings, but as I think has been highlighted, the sort of I very much welcome the comments from Councillor Myers. We do want to see as most effective use of constrained resources, but that I would hope can come by virtue of having a complete fresh look at the way we operate, which reflects not just service needs, but the opportunities from a different method of working arising out of our response to the pandemic. We have got a clear priority for building back better and to responding to climate change, and that is reflected, I believe, in the structure that's being put forward. But I think so it's a case very much of trying to work smarter and to ensure that we have nobody likes a reorganisation at best of times, but it does give that opportunity for everybody to reflect on the way that we currently deliver services and the opportunities that a new structure can provide for doing that in a more effective way and a more coherent way, which responds to the new local plan, the need to recover, support recovery of our local economy, and the needs of individuals who've been affected by the pandemic. So I welcome this report, and I think hopefully with the consultation going forward to take account of the views of staff and users, that we can develop a service or services across the piece that work together with each other and are more efficient than we might have been able to achieve up to now.
Thank you very much for that. I can't see any other questions or comments, so I'll move to the recommendations in a second, but just wanted to check in that there wasn't any last comments you wanted to make.
No, nothing for me.
Great, thank you very much. So the recommendations are included at paragraph 82 on page 32 of the agenda packs. Could I see those in favour of accepting those recommendations? Thank you very much. And Councillor Myers, I don't know if you want to confirm. Oops.
Yeah.
Abstention or.
It's a wait and see for me. I know that we're moving to consultation now as a result of after tonight's meeting, and given the comments I made, I think I wouldn't want to endorse the recommendations at present.
Does that mean it goes down as an abstention, or?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, abstention.
That's just so Janie knows what to put. Thank you very much. So that was passed by a clear majority of the recommendations that are listed at paragraph 82. So thank you very much for that to everybody. That then obviously takes us on to the next agenda item, which, because I'm skipping agenda item 7 because we'll go into private session at that point. Trudy, you're.
Yeah, sorry, just on the recommendations. If we're going forward with option 3, it was to agree the necessary appointment subcommittees as well, because if you delegate from this group, we can work with finalising job descriptions with those committees.
Yeah, so when I said, do we agree the recommendations at paragraph 82, that just the clarity for the video, that includes the 3 bullet points that are at paragraph 82, which is the bullet point that we consider the options in the report, and the bullet point that we agree to Ian progressing with the implementation of the recommended option 3, and that we agree to set up the relevant appointment subcommittees to carry out the process in line with HR processes.
So if I come round and get nominations outside the meeting for that subcommittee, that's fine. Thank you.
Yes, please. Just to check with Janie that everything is as I think it is there. I can see you nodding. Yes, great. Thank you very much. As I said, we'll come back to agenda item 7. So we'll go on to agenda item 8 now, which is the work plan, pages 131 to 132, and over to Trudy.
Yeah, so it's the work plan for the next year, really. Apologies, we were to bring back the workforce demographics to this meeting, but obviously with the paper on the structure, we felt it best to give that better place time in January's meeting. So that'll be published at the beginning of January for us to discuss at the next meeting at the 11th of January. And then they're just standard agenda items, really, with June bringing back the next workforce demographics.
Thank you very much. So I'll just give anybody an opportunity to ask Trudy any questions. If not, I think, are we just being asked to note it? So I don't know whether we need a vote, Janie, but I can see nods. So I shall assume that we happily note that. Thank you very much to everybody. That then, all I have to say is that there is no urgent business under agenda item 9 that I'm aware of. So therefore we can then go back to agenda item 7, pension or exit discretion, and drop into private session. But thank you to those for joining and listening along. Thanks. Bye-bye.